Hey, how's it going, man? I'm not hearing you. Yeah, I'm not. Oh, you're muted.
Oh, how's Florida?
Oh, it's fantastic. It's sunny and beautiful, and it's about 70 degrees when we got up this morning, and it gets up to about 90. And I tried setting up so that I had the ocean in the background, but the sun was, blacking out my camera on my laptop. But it's pretty cool. I'm just sitting here watching dolphin and scratching my no-see bites. How's the audio sounding? I've never done this with my AirPods.
It's definitely not as clear as a microphone, but it's fine.
It's probably better than just using my onboard mic, I was thinking.
Yeah, probably.
Okay. How about you, man? How's it going?
It's cold as shit here.
Really?
Yeah, like I think there's frost on my car. I'm for sure in sweatpants. Super glad that yeah, it's 43 right now
Oh, wow.
and like overcast. I think it got down to like 35 overnight. Yeah, it's cold.
Yeah, I think we had a frost back in Michigan since we've been gone.
I'm super glad that we have central air right now. And I don't have to build a fire every day.
Oh, there you go.
Oh man, let's I can find the thing that Construction Dive sent me.
So we're just gonna do the kind of the follow Andy's lead, and
Unless you got something else specific you want to talk about.
today I'm good with kind of the random.
Oh yeah, here it is.
I do need to cut loose no later than one. We're actually going to look at a rental condo for sale down the way.
Nice.
I think I might jumpstart the retirement.
Hey man, in this remote world, like fuck it. If you can spend 2-3 months a year in Florida.
That's kind of where we're looking at, man. And if we can get it and get the thing rented, make some passive income on the side, and at the very worst case, just pay for a place to come crash. It's not where we're at right here. It's a condo and a multiplex down the way, but it'll be a start.
Yeah. And I mean, shit, how much are you doing like during, January, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about that. I mean, we do a fucking podcast from other sides of the country. There's really nothing I can't do remotely. And if I did have a face-to-face meeting, a couple $100 will fly me up north on Allegiant pretty easily.
Right. Well, but even that, like, I'm just saying in like for projects, like how many meetings are between December 15th and January 15th?
Oh, sure. Yeah, most of the world is already coasting by that point or ramping down.
Like nobody's in the office, nobody cares. Now you have some government assholes that I've had projects that want shit on like January 3rd, but when we were working on West Point, they wanted drawings on like January 2nd or 3rd. It's like, get out of town.
It's just to spite you.
like nobody thought about it, it was just like, here's the deadline. And all right, I'll do an intro here and we'll get going. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Construction Corner Podcast. I'm Dillon. I'm your host, joined now, as always, by my blue collar badass, Matt. How's vacation?
It is fantastic, Dylan. I'm down here in Southwest Florida. It's perfectly clear skies, sunny. It gets to about 90 degrees. And as we're recording right now, I'm watching dolphins jump out in the Gulf about, 50 yards from my doorstep. So things are pretty sweet, man. How about yourself?
So not sweet. It's cold as shit here in the mountains. But hey, that's just that time of year. And I know, like, dude, I'm a big fan of dolphins. So years ago when I was in Maui, we had, like, rarely where we stay on the west side of the island do dolphins like swim in that portion. We were coming back from like just a walk down the beach and we could see them jumping out in the water. So I booked it to the room to go get my like fins and goggles because they were not close to shore. It was probably 500 yards out, maybe. Like you could see them, but it was a swim to get there. And luckily, like I got my GoPro and went out there and swam with, like, there was maybe like 3 or 4 versus like in another time I've swam with like a full pod where it's like 200 dolphins.
Oh, wow. No kidding. That's got to be amazing. I've never done that. I mean, we see them constantly out here, but I've not like jumped in the mix with them.
Yeah, it's really cool. Like they make it look so effortless in swimming to where, and I'm like working my ass off trying to, kind of keep up and with fins on, and you're just like, oh, it's not going to happen.
So were they cool with you being around, being that close, or were they trying to get the hell out of Dodge?
No, they were fine. Like they got like close enough. You thought you could touch them, but it was like still like 10 feet away, but they were fine. Like I took some video. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, do that, man. I'd love to take a look and show the boys. They're amazing, spectacular creatures at the very least. But if you get into the actual science of it and the echolocation and the size of their damn brains, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, like if anybody has a chance to go and do that, to like swim with dolphins, and I mean, in Florida, in Hawaii, like there's some spots that they're like typically in, so you can be pretty you can get lucky, if you will, and see them. But it's for sure something to be excited about.
Yeah, man, we love it. Just seeing them jumping around. And we got here, I'm on island time, so I don't know what day it is anymore, but we got here a few days ago, and there was really nasty red tide, like bad enough that I made it about half hour outside and I couldn't breathe anymore. I'm like, oh shit. But the ocean, man, it never fails to disappoint. Within 2 days, that shit cleared up. It all pushed away somewhere. It's not here. The water's perfectly clear. It cooled down a little bit, and it's amazing. So, cool place to be.
Yeah, I think that's one of the lessons like you learn doing 75 hard is that, like, if you don't like the weather, just wait a couple hours, especially like in the Midwest and, or wait a day. Right. But in 75 hard, like you just got to go out there, do it. And, some days are better than others.
Yeah, absolutely. I had hoped to do this kind of like Ed Milet, sitting out on the patio with the ocean in the background and the waves, but I couldn't figure out how to set it up so that you could see anything. The sunshine was messing with my my onboard camera, so you get my American flag background instead.
Yeah, man. So guys, today we're thinking, one, with Matt being on vacation, to do things a little more lighthearted, and especially with everything going on in the world, to provide a little bit of entertainment more so than some heavy topics. So today It's going to be, Matt and Dillon cruise the internet and look for topics going on in construction and just what's going on in the world. So in cruising the internet, one of the things that I found, and for Matt, I'll share my screen here since we're doing this from California to Florida. But with that, so Consigli tests robots for automated building layout system. So this is a construction company, Consigli. They're based in Massachusetts, and they're doing a test project on a 240,000 square foot life sciences building with Rugged Robotics of Houston. So there's another company called Dusty Robotics that's out of the Bay Area, who's been around for a few years now, who I've met actually in person, amazingly, a couple years ago in San Francisco for the Society of Construction Solutions event that gets held in San Francisco, talking about different technologies and companies that are coming up. But Dusty Robotics, Rugged Robotics appear to do the same thing. They use an inkjet to do layouts. And then with that, instead of like your typical chalk layouts, chalk lines, one, it's they're going to be using the like geolocation basically within the building, so you can set up all your waypoints to do that, and your dimensioning off of it. I'm blanking on what that system. Do you remember what that system's called?
The total station.
Yeah, they'll use the total stations to do distance and everything, so you have like an actual waypoint for it that it'll ping back to. Trying to find a better picture of these damn things, but the other thing that they could do is, because it's ink and flooring is going to go over it, they're just going to spray it on the concrete. Is one of the things that Dusty Robotics had talked about doing is you can now put like room names in ink on the floor. So now you can put more information down than just like the wall outlines, right? And because it's a robot, they can actually do both sides of the wall. So you can see where the wall is actually going to sit, right? They can offset that to where it's a 6-inch wall, 4-inch wall. Like they can do the full wall outline on the floor plus room names and all this other stuff, and you can just kind of one person can set these things loose versus having a full like chalk team.
Well, I'll jump on that one because that's amazing to me. I've not seen that roboticized, if that's a word. I haven't seen layout done with robots yet. That's incredible. Typically the way we lay out a building is still pretty old school and archaic with a chalk box and a tape measure, and then some Aquanet hairspray. And it's painstakingly slow, especially on a detailed or any sort of larger building where you've got walls, you've got spacing that has to be held throughout everything, and for all the systems and all the infrastructure from plumbing to the HVAC layout, everything is all interrelated to each other. To have that done with robots accurately, let me preface it that the shit's got to be accurate and correct. But like you mentioned, Dylan, to strike or to paint, print, whatever, both sides of the stud or both sides of the slip track, that's huge, because I've also been on tons of jobs where inevitably, humans lay it out. It's all fine and good. You spray hairspray on it to keep the chalk from going away, but somebody will inevitably put the track on the wrong side of the line. Now your stud wall is off 6 inches or 3.5 inches, whatever the width may be, and it leads to rework and problems. So to have both lines there, so it almost makes it foolproof for then the carpenters in the field to actually just slap the track right where it fits in between. That's pretty slick.
Yeah.
Any idea what the cost is?
Well, look, I know for some of this, how Dusty did this, and some of the other robotics companies have been doing it, is where they're basically a sub to like the wall contractor, so that it's not in the GC, so they're working directly with like the wall contractor to put this stuff down, so that you're not basically releasing a robot or anything like that, or doing whatever. So, it's really coming in as a subcontractor to do layout for these people, which is actually a very good model, so that they're responsible for layout. And again, it's going to get like 95-8%. There's going to probably be some weird shit in a corner somewhere, that in a weird wall, that it's just not going to be able to do. So by having their team there to do that, you still get layout, and whether the robot does it or not is a different deal. But it's a good way to cash flow the business with robotics, and testing it and doing it on actual jobs and all that stuff.
Oh, absolutely. And if I'm reading that right, these things can paint down 5,000 lineal feet a day. That's pretty impressive.
Right.
Granted, that's got to be on a single floor, I'm sure, and there's probably different variables that actually slow them down. But either way you cut it, that's way faster than two dudes in a chalk box.
Yeah, right. And then if you start, and that's per robot, so then you deploy multiple robots. You can start to really do this. And then if you get, let's say you get 10 and it's a multi-story building, granted, if the floors are poured, now you can start to, do a whole bunch in a day.
Oh, I'm just thinking this. We're in the middle right now of constructing a climate controlled storage facility, and that's got partition density like crazy because of what its use is. But if you could deploy a handful of these robots in there to lay that thing out, that'd be a huge time saver. Because I got to imagine the guys that are coming to install our actual corrugated walls and doors, it's going to take them a week to strike all those lines and to get it all laid out. And yeah, they have some efficiencies, I'm sure, because it's all repetitive. So they probably just, hit the ends or whatever. But to let loose a fleet of robots to do it seems like a really cool idea for something like that, for that sort of use.
Yeah, and especially like if you've already done your job in Revit or CAD, whatever, and you have all these layouts, you've got total. So part of this too is you need total stations like on site, which doing those points isn't, terribly overwhelming, but like it's one of those things that you need to have, some base point set on the site so that the robot, can configure from there. Right. So that's part of this is, but again, if you're using total stations already, now, it's a pretty simple thing to do that, with the robot, to set that base point. Here's where you are, and, go forth and mark lines.
No, that's really cool. I mean, we don't typically see total stations inside any of our buildings. We just, for whatever reason, we haven't adopted that. Our guys haven't really adopted that sort of tech yet, but we certainly see them outside. We have stations set up for our field layout, everything civil related. So I don't know why we couldn't just bring the damn thing inside the building once it's dried in. And looking at these videos and pictures you've got playing, that's, it's taken BIM and putting it into the actual visual 3D world, where you're seeing cutouts for duck chases and all that stuff. That's really neat.
Yeah, and that's been the big thing for in particular in using total stations in, where you have big slab pours and stuff, is when you're doing anything through slab, so any floor boxes, any chases, in multi-story buildings, that's really the biggest piece of using those total stations, is now where all the rebar is, because you've done all those scans continuously for pours, right, and at different points within the project, and now you can measure off of that total station where a floor box is going to go, where a duct chase is going to go, where a pipe chase is going to go, all those different things, where the rebar actually is, so you don't have to come in and x-ray it to make those cuts. So that's been some of the other pieces and uses, especially in multi-story, concrete slab buildings, to where, it would cost you $800 to bring in an x-ray and shoot the slab. But if you've done it through the whole process where you've got scans of those slab pours of where all the rebar is. Now you can pretty easily figure out, can I cut here without having to bring in an x-ray to do that. You can do, and then you do the outlines, with something like this from either Dusty or Rugged, and all these, like, so Dusty is a complete West Coast thing since they're based out of the Bay Area. So they're only going to do Washington, Oregon, and California. And then this Rugged Robotics out of Houston. So now they're doing some stuff out in Massachusetts. And again, with like a print head, right? So it's just a inkjet printer basically for this in particular. But it's really cool to see, a couple of these companies coming up and proving that it can actually work, and to do it really across the country.
Yeah, and it's like we've always talked about. It's not robots taking over human jobs. It's robots keeping those human jobs incredibly way more efficient than they are now. It just, that idea alone of setting loose a robot or 2 or 20, whatever the job is, versus tying up human manpower to do that sort of layout, that repetitive task that is very easily calculated, and I don't understand all the technology. I don't care to either, but it's all just math based, right? It's distance and volumetric parameters that allow those things to go where they need to go, along with, intertwined in the CAD or Revit. It seems like a no-brainer. I mean, again, I haven't seen the numbers to see if I could integrate that into one of my jobs without too much heartburn, but it's got to keep the carpentry or whatever layout trade is way more efficient, because they're just not spending that dull time doing such a repetitive task.
Yeah. So when it comes down to, when you talk about things like this, there's a few things to consider. So one is just the straight up cost of it, right? Like, what does it cost to do? 2 is how much time are you saving? So if you can now, like you were saying, a week to lay it out, and you do it in a day, so you save 4 days on layout, which, you gain back in putting it down. And then if you also save time in not reworking a wall, right, because somebody didn't place it incorrectly. So let's just say that you are 2 weeks to the good. What does that do for your client, right? What can you now charge to be 2 weeks faster than the next guy? And then the next thing to consider, especially for like drywall contractors, is, and all the guys doing layout, is what is the benefit of those guys not having to bend down for a week doing chalk lines, right? Like, how much more longevity, how many less injuries are you going to have on the job site because you're not stressing your guys, right? Like, those are the other things to consider. Same with like the painting robot to do drywall finish and stuff like that is, you have one operator now for a robot that can do a bunch of stuff. Granted, you still got to tape and whatnot, but there's now to do, paint and finish, like, you're going to do a lot better on it, right? Like, there's, and I'll bring that up. So Canvas is the robotics company. So for stuff like this, like, what are the benefits of, now in reduction to your workforce, right? Like in work comp, injuries, all that kind of stuff, to where, and now you have one guy using it that can basically do a lot more work than anything else. So through a lot of these robotics, it's not just what's the upfront cost, even if it's the same to do it as layout versus, using this robot, even if the cost is equal, you make so many other benefits that, plus, like we've talked about, skilled labor shortages, like the amount of building demand, right? The amount of costs, the amount of stuff that goes into buildings, right? Where now you can have 1-2 operators and do a lot more stuff, and in a controlled, safe environment, to where now, a guy isn't breaking his back to do drywall finishes, right? Or to do layout or anything like that. So this is some of the things that I think when you talk about robotics, when you talk about automation, when you talk about all these different things. There's a lot to consider, not just the upfront cost of it, which I think a lot of the times, and we're all guilty of this in some way, but we, shoot ourselves in the foot because we look at first costs, not at, total value.
Yeah, because that's been the way we've all been raised, right? We've all been trained to protect that bottom line at all costs, and that's how we all make money. That's how we succeed. But you're right. If you protect that bottom line to the point where you're not protecting your human capital, what good are you then? Because we do have a labor shortage. We've talked about that quite a bit. We don't have an influx of people like we need in this industry. So it just makes a lot of sense if there's a technology available to go finish walls and it works and it's easily deployable, and it's not gimmicky anymore. That's going to keep my finisher working for maybe another, I don't know, how do you quantify it? But it's protecting his back, it's protecting his shoulders, and you still get a quality product. You still have those people who need to be involved because, like you mentioned with the layout robots, there's always going to be anomalies in any job where a robot just can't quickly figure it out, right? They're not 100% autonomous yet. So you still have to have your finisher around because there's going to be weird corners or curves or, bulkheads or something where the robot just can't do it. But you can greatly reduce the workload and the physical task on your finisher by having this thing kind of, working alongside him.
Yeah, and to even tie some of the things that we talked about last week with cash flow is now, for manpower, for resource allocations, for job costing, right? Like you can have something like this and put it on a job site, earlier, right, to help with cash flows, because now you can do more in a shorter period of time, meaning you're going to get paid more for it and all that type of stuff. It's no different than, the analogy of a hammer to a nail gun, right? Like it's the same thing. You improve efficiencies, it's more consistent, it's less work, right? It's the same thing. It's just in a different, bigger form.
Yeah, and as owners, as leaders, we just have to be planning for that sort of thing. It's a hammer to a nail gun, it's a shovel to a bobcat. There's ways to increase efficiency really easily out there available, and as long as you're planning for it from the very beginning and you're building those costs into your estimates, you're building that time or taking off that time rather out of your schedules, it really seems quite easy to figure out how to deploy that sort of anything, as long as you plan it. It's all about planning, and as long as you're planning early enough, you can work quite almost anything into a project.
Speaking of big projects, and I'm trying to find things that are nice and fun here versus some of the other things that are in the news. But in Turkey, they are getting close to the world's longest suspension bridge. So they've got kind of everything in place. And with that, it's going to be 2,023 meters, edging out Japan's Akashi Kayoko Bridge, which has a 1,992 meter span, which is pretty incredible. So for really big engineering projects, it's the 100th year of the Turkish Republic. Really nothing to do with the bridge other than this is just really cool. So they're putting in the suspension bridge. We're looking at some pictures to where they've got the piers in the water, putting the suspension bridge in. They've got some piers in and starting to set roof deck or to set deck for the traffic. It looks like they've got 2, 3, 4 piers in there. It's really cool. Just a really cool thing to see.
It is very cool, and it's crazy to me to think about the machinery, the equipment needed, like just to set those piers alone, right? That's stuff that in my world we don't see, obviously, but to set those piers and then to somehow drape those cable or whatever the hell it actually is called. I mean,
Yeah, steel cable.
it's it's got to be just a phenomenally huge barge crane. Is that what they use for this sort of thing?
5,000-ton floating crane. And
Oh,
where this is, so this is over one of the straits in Turkey. And it's been a project like in the works for like 30 years apparently. But in this, they apparently have severe weather. So they got a plan to set the decks when the wind is not too severe. And probably like they probably have, a couple foot ocean waves through this. So 3-4 foot wave. I mean, I have no idea, but like here's two cranes with 300-ton lifting capacity to place the final core panel forming the last tower in just 30 minutes, right? So they had to like plan and execute this thing to happen pretty quickly.
that's astonishing. I mean, I just look back at this summer that we've had in Michigan, and trying to plan around the weather with our measly little projects to coordinate something like these folks are doing or have done. That's something else.
Yeah, and I mean in reading this article, like, stuff comes from like Singapore and, other places around the world to get this bridge put up, right? It's a 2.5 billion build, operate, transfer contract that took like 5 years that they put in 2016. So like it's, 25 financial institutions from 10 countries
Oh my gosh.
to do the 2.5 billion, and then to build and set all these piers, 5-year construction period, 12-year operational phase, like it's just high winds, high seismic activity, high stacked container ships, right, to get through here because this is into where's the map again? This is into, I'm pretty sure that's the Black Sea in Turkey.
It's just massive on a scale that most people don't get to see ever.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things, and like, we've talked about a little bit before, is like the amount of time saved. Yeah. So well, it's not the Black Sea. What is this? This is the Sea of Marmara. So on the northern edge of Turkey, south of Istanbul. So it's probably like in this area to get, ships up and through into this side of Istanbul, and then through and into the Black Sea, which will then get into the southern side of Ukraine, into Romania, and then into Georgia, and some, I think this is that Kazakhstan? So into some of these other countries in the shipping lanes. So they've got to, I mean, ships have to go through there for goods and all that kind of stuff. But I think this is where the bridge is, like for Ula and Lipensky is where that was sitting. Yeah, right in here. So it's it's a big deal, but it's cool to see like just huge engineering projects, in places around the world that really have needed one for a long time. I was at a conference at one point where they were talking about the travel in Turkey using like Foursquare, where people are checking in for it. And in Istanbul in particular, there's a ferry spot so you can see all the travels, but to go go across in Istanbul, people would work on each side, and there was a lot of ferry traffic that went around. So it's kind of cool to see some of these different things because of, either lack of bridges, or it was just way quicker to take a ferry than it was to drive.
Yeah, that's something else, man. Just the sheer scale of it. Like I have a hard time even comprehending a project like that. I've built some bigger things in my day, but nothing like that.
I mean, it's the world's longest, so very few people have worked on, it's 2,000-meter suspension bridge. Um, it's a long, over a mile long, like mile and a half to get across this, and just the sheer feats to stack all these cables, put it up, guys that are hundreds of feet above the water line, right? The seas, the high winds, like everything that they would need to do to put this together.
What's really crazy if you get into it, and we talked a couple weeks ago, I think, about, we were talking about bridges for some reason, and the Mackinac Bridge and the Sunshine Skyway Bridge down here. When you look at footage and records of when those were built, and the lack of general safety features like that we have today, I mean, that's when it really gets crazy. When you're talking about, dudes hanging by rope hundreds of feet above, the Mackinac Straits. It's really incredible what those men and women were able to accomplish back then.
Yeah, I mean, that's why the picture, for the Empire State Building is so iconic, and the steel workers sitting up there, no ropes, no nothing, with their lunch boxes. And, it's just so iconic because, one, it was I'm pretty sure at the time it was the largest structure to be erected. Two, was made of steel. Three, they did it in, I think, like 10 months, they put it up. So it was built extremely fast, especially compared to today's standards. So things like that. And, someone's going to correct me, but it was like 10 to 14 months. It was, they put it up very, very quickly to erect that building. So, a lot of things we've come a long way, right? From, I don't know how many people died in putting up the Empire State Building to now, what we're able to put up with, minimal, if any, casualties.
Yeah. I mean, it slows things down, but it's amazing that I mean, I can't even put words to it. To put in your head the monstrosity those people are building and the conditions they're building it in. And I haven't looked or read the articles, but I'm assuming not a whole heap of people have perished building that thing.
Yeah.
That's outstanding.
Yeah. Oh, this is talking about the Allied forces, but yeah, there's not a single thing of death mentioned in this article about the bridge, like, or casualties, yeah, nothing mentioned in the in the article. I guess the next thing, to, again, being on a upbeat type of note, is construction technology funding skyrockets to new levels. So in construction dive, $2.1 billion has been invested thus far here. This article was published October 6th of this year, 2021, saying that we are 100% increase from a year ago, which is pretty incredible. That's close to 100%, and late stage funding jumped more than 150% during the same span. So a lot of people are investing in technology, and some of this is going to be with COVID, with remote workforce, all that kind of stuff. But also just companies that are spinning up and wanting to, I guess let's dive into this a little more, because I think, and I've had this kind of insight for a while, is there's a lot of people that see piss poor productivity from construction firms. They see, shitty margins, all this stuff, and they come into our industry. We think these firms are going to fare, especially when you look at the massive failure that Katerra had in, just lighting $1 billion on fire.
We had Gareth McGlynn on a couple months ago, and we kind of were talking with him about, estimating technology in particular. He made the statement that, if you're not already working on this, you're not already integrating it, you're already behind. That the big guys have seen this coming, I think, long before COVID. COVID probably helped kind of spark a general interest and maybe ramp up some efforts. But if you're not getting the tech in now, you're already behind the eight ball.
Yeah.
looking at these numbers that you're flashing up, that's, $230 million, $2.1 billion. That's significant, and it should be a wake up call to everybody in the industry that, we got to keep growing. We got to keep innovating. You got to stay on top of these trends, because that's no small dollar amount. This isn't just a passing phase.
Yeah, and a lot of this is, like in visualization and in seeing things, and there's some of that. My kind of wariness with a lot of this is, for most of these firms out there, while visualization of data is cool, it can help make decisions for sure in a lot of ways. The question always becomes, are they going to use it? You might be able to sell it, but how easily implementable is this, and how crucial can it be to your workflow? Autodesk has a lot of good things and bad things going for it, but they have done a really good job in becoming a crucial part of the workflow. And you could say a lot of bad things about Autodesk, but they've helped in a lot of ways to really bring technology, to bring BIM, to bring all this, their cloud technology to the forefront of everything that's really allowing this to happen. And I don't think Autodesk really gets enough credit because everyone kind of builds on their stuff. But that's one piece in a lot of this is, how much is it actually going to get used, and where's execution fall into this conversation?
Well, and that's just it. I mean, when I think of construction tech, I go immediately to the cool robots and the sexy side of it. When somebody who's in construction tech thinks of it, there's way more technology available out there that may not have the sexy front to it. It's not a walking robot, but it's things like, let's just throw you out there, Cowabunga Studios. It's the incredible design software and technology that people like yourself have come up with that frankly Autodesk should get on board with and talk about acquiring you. That's a different show, but it's technology that gets used, that truly can push efficiency. It's almost, it's kind of behind the scenes. The firms that are using your software, for example, don't necessarily have to advertise they're using it, but it's boosting their efficiency, and it does get used on a day-to-day basis by their people who are tasked with MEP design in this case. So, when you see these kind of dollars, it's real easy, I think, to immediately go to, okay, it's the robots, it's doing, the Boston Dynamics guys putting on fun little videos of dancing machines. But in reality, that's a part of it, sure, but I think a much bigger part of it is the behind the scenes tech that the average person probably never really even knows what it is, and doesn't maybe have a reason to.
Yeah, and it's, with any construction firm, I think that, I mean, this goes for a lot of companies too, but within construction, within, design and construction firms, we're so focused on the day-to-day, the fires that are being raised, right? The problems in construction, the different things that we have to deal with, to where we're not looking up in the horizon, right? We're just rowing the boat. We're not really steering the ship. And that's something that I think needs to happen more often, is for people to look up, see what's out there, not just the next client, not just the next project. And I get it, within construction, we're fighting for every project, we're fighting for every dollar. There's really no kind of safety security within recurring revenue. If you can find some way to provide, information, newsletters, things like that to clients, and have them pay for it. It doesn't have to be crazy, but to be able to have the ability to really put yourself in a position where cash is coming in, no matter whether you perform a project or not, can add a lot of safety and security to your firm, to where you can go and put your head up, right? To go and look at other things that aren't just that next project, that you're not just fighting and clawing tooth and nail to get the next thing and take every project that comes in the door. Whether they're good or bad, you're going to take it because you need the revenue, and that's just not a good place to be in. Yet that's where a lot of people live. So I think there's two sides of it in that. Yeah, and also just the hiring and firing and increase in people, right? As you get more projects. And this is a big thing that I've been talking about here lately, is that as you look to scale your firm, your overhead is going to raise with it, right? And then your margins you're never going to increase. Sure, the dollar value is going to increase, but if you're 3.5% margins, so on 100 million, you're only making 3.5, right? Because your margins are so small, and that's retained earnings in the company, not dividends to owners. But if on 3.5 net margins, percent net margin, which is a lot of firms, like you need to do a lot of work, take on a lot of risk to make what is effectively very little money. I mean, and you look at the big firms like Jacobs, like AECom, they're less than 1% net margins. Jacobs will do 18 billion in revenue and they'll make 100 million bucks, and which you can go look up on their 10K, which is readily available. So a lot of these firms are really not making a lot of money for how much revenue that they do.
And very few people recognize that. Even people in the industry don't recognize that. It's always feast or famine in construction, but there's ways to offset that downside of it, right? You always have to be looking for the next project, because like you said, the typical construction firm anyways, even the big ones, don't sign multi-year recurring deals. It's not selling a license or a renewal based product. So you have to be looking for the next project. But like Jocko talks about, and I'm paraphrasing, you have to also be able to elevate and to detach and elevate, and see the forest from the trees, and be able to get up and get that 30,000 foot view to really chart a good course for your organization through the future. And if that means investing in software, investing in design software or estimating software, or if that means investing in layout robots, these are all aspects that are going to help keep pushing us and keep us all in the game as we move through the future.
Yeah, and I mean, as you look at it, with a lot of these things is, if let's just say that robot costs the same as a person, right? Let's just say that it costs you 30 grand a year, which apparently is about the same as a window worker at McDonald's these days. So if that robot costs you 30 grand a year, 16 bucks an hour for full-time person, and can put out 2, 3, 4 times the results, right? Ultimately the work that a person can do, is that worth it? And those are the types
I'd say
of
yes.
Right. And then you can scale pretty easily, right? If you do more projects, then you get one more robot, you can do 4 times as much. It's extremely profitable. You end up being able to scale without having to hire people. You don't have to worry about Joe or Susie being hungover. You don't have to worry about their personal problems at home, right? You don't have to worry about a lot of those things. And I'm not saying to not hire people. You do need people, and you need people that are reliable and show up and, talk to the clients and give you more work. But at the same time, we also know how unreliable most people are in just their day-to-day lives. They got a lot of stuff going on, whether it's at home, whether it's watching the news, whether it's whatever, right? They got a drug and alcohol problem. Like, there's a lot of things going on to where having tools and processes and systems and software and robotics in place allows you to now ride through those ups and downs of your people without too much disruption to the end client. And that's ultimately what it's about. Can you ride through the waves and do that pretty well? And software and a lot of other things can help you do that.
Yeah, and I'd agree with you. It's not getting rid of human capital, but it's tempering some of that reliance. It's offsetting risk and allowing you to redeploy assets in a different way and utilize your human capital in a different way to produce more efficient, better, bigger results.
Yeah, and it's one of those things too, like as firms scale, right? You need people. But as we mentioned, if you're on a project basis and you win a bunch of projects this year and you don't next year, well, now you got to fire a bunch of people because you can't hold on to them. And that's the trouble that a lot of firms go through is they hire and fire, and they're known for cycling through people because they can't plan, their marketing is not consistent, they don't win projects. And a lot of this, granted, in construction has to do with the economy, what other people are doing, and you can't control how many projects are out there or not. You can only execute on what's going on in the marketplace, which also is why, if you can bring financing and other things to the table, you're going to be a more valued partner to make those projects happen. So something to consider, and really all this is, putting in other pieces so that you can keep your core staff, you can scale, you can grow, you can make more money, take more home with less risk, and allow your team to really thrive without working 90-hour weeks.
So that you can pop down to Southwest Florida once in a while and stare off at the other kind of waves.
Yeah, and I mean, it's when we talk work-life balance, all that stuff, right? It's being able to where you don't have to manage the fires, to manage the day in and day out, and that your business is going to be fine whether you're there or not. And frankly, most design firms can't operate that way. Most construction firms can't operate that way. Most businesses can't operate that way, where you can tell a great deal of difference between if the owner is in town or not.
Yeah, and speaking from personal experience, that's a very difficult thing to get past, and that's a big topic of what we talk about here. It's building culture, it's building, based on values, and setting in place a system that is efficient and solid enough that you can step away for a little bit, because you have to be able to do that. Because if you can't, you already said it. You can go work at McDonald's now and make $21 an hour. I saw this morning. You could do that, and you can collect your paycheck and punch out and be done with it. If you want to succeed in this entrepreneurial life that we talk about so often, regardless of what industry it is, you got to be able to build that team, to gain efficiency, and to get yourself to a point where you can bounce out for a few days, and the walls don't come crumbling down. There are other people with hoses that can put out fires in your absence. Does it always work? No, but it's something to strive for, I think.
Absolutely. And so for our last article today, as we cruise the internet, is Intel breaks ground on 2 Arizona chip plants worth $20 billion. So what are your thoughts on Intel bringing back chip manufacturing to the US? So here's the other couple highlights: is 3,000 Intel employees will be there in these 3,000 construction jobs. I'm guessing this is going to be like a 2-year project. 15,000 indirect jobs in the community, which that I believe. And it's semiconductor fabricator factories, it's fabs. So those are the big highlights for this in Arizona.
Here's my parting thought on that one. We should have done that shit a long time ago. We never should have let all of that manufacturing, all that fabrication leave our shores, and now we're paying the price. So it's about damn time somebody steps up and brings it back, because we need the jobs. We obviously need the damn chips to do most everything we're doing these days. It only makes sense that it should be here under domestic production. Good on Intel for doing it, but why didn't you do it 5 years ago?
Because the Senate just gave them the money to build it.
That probably helps quite a bit, I suppose. I see the $52 billion you just highlighted.
Yeah. So the Senate passed the Innovation and Competition Act uh, last June. So this has been under Trump, which would provide 52 billion towards domestic semiconductor research and production. I don't know. I guess it took a year to figure out how to do the bill. But this project is 670,000 square feet. And it's going to bring six. So it's on an existing campus, up to 6 fabs in this campus. So they're probably at least doubling production, 3 times larger than the old facility. So they're tripling expansion. And it's had that campus since 1980, but they haven't done anything in 26 years. And a lot of it is, in Taiwan, and Taiwan Semiconductor announces building a 12 billion, 3.8 million square foot manufacturing complex in Phoenix. So Taiwan Semiconductor, which is also one of the largest in the world, is bringing their stuff to the US as well.
Go faster. We were able to pump out 3 vaccines in record time. Maybe we can get this building built and start churning up the chips that we need.
Yeah, I'm sure the building will be put up in 6 months. It's everything inside that's going to take forever.
Right. That's good to see. Anyways, I mean, it's good for the economy, and it's good to see jobs like that being created.
Yeah, it'll be 30 billion between Intel and Taiwan Semiconductor in fabs put in Arizona, which, there's no better place than a water intensive facility to put it in the desert. So
yeah, there's planning for you.
Parting thoughts for today.
I enjoyed this. I think we should kind of rotate this into our mix, kind of a quick fire. You pick some articles and throw them at me, and then we'll do vice versa the next time, and we'll see how it works. We'll see what people think about it. Guys, if you like it, let us know, share it, give us some thoughts, and help us keep growing this thing.
Yeah, guys. So this is a little bit of a new format for us, where as we kind of cruise the internet, see what's going on, we'll, depending on what mood we're in, we'll either make this nice and upbeat, or choose the kind of big, hairy topics that are out there, and give you our thoughts on them. So we'll kind of rotate what we go through, what's relevant, how light or not we want to keep the episode, but all real issues, right? All real things that we're dealing with in the industry, that we're having to compete against or deal with in various shapes and forms, from really cool engineering projects and marvels to building new fab plants that we desperately need, to robotics and helping us kind of automate and update our workforce, and really keep all the people that we've had in the workforce for 30, 40 years, to allow them to continue being productive members of our teams, and keep them really in the industry, their knowledge within the industry, versus them kind of rotting on the vine somewhere, or dealing with other painful problems, right? And that they can't reach overhead, or whatever it might be, from the years in the industry, putting up drywall, or doing layouts, all that sort of thing. So always cool to see what's out there. Always cool to see the new and innovative things that people are coming up with. And as always, guys, share the show. If you like it, if you want different topics, feel free to reach out to Matt and myself. We'll be entertaining different topics. I won't say that we'll do it, but we'll at least give it consideration. So go ahead, share the show, and until next time.